Hello, and this would be my first take on Zenless Zone Zero. Now, we're going to have to lay a few ground rules because, once again, this is a highly controversial take. However, we will make sure that this will be highly transparent and I will explain all of my points henceforth so that way there's no complications because I, unlike most, have the most interesting take on Zenless Zone Zero as a whole, and we will go about that now. So stay tuned for the ride as this will be a longer video and I will give a full take. Now, I do believe that I am qualified to actually speak on the matter because I can say that I have clocked well over 40 hours of gameplay and I have reached Internet level 33 currently. I'm trying to keep up with Mr. Pokey. I'm neck and neck with him right now, pretty much, I feel. I did go ahead and do my own deep dive, and I will be going over everything, and I do mean everything. So again, this will be a longer video. Now, if we can go ahead and get into the details, we're going to address the big elephant in the room. The biggest elephant in the room is gonna have to be the TV system. Now, people hate. I mean, they hate this mode, and I'm gonna have the hottest take here. I 100% love the TV system, and I will explain as to why I actually do like this system. And I do think that while it is sometimes a bit more annoying than it should be, the TV system is actually a really good idea that has been put into practice, and it's really, really, really fun to actually go through because this reminds me a lot of retro style games. And what I do mean by retro is certain games. I guess I'm the outlier, but I do mean games like specifically Dragon Ball Z, Budokai 2 in specifics. Now, the reason why I reference it as the first example is I do remember that they actually did have no massive cutscenes, and they would have major events happen outside of a cutscene, and it would just happen via like a grid system where the characters would actually sit there and just be moving across like a grid. And I believe it was like somewhat turn based because you had to run around and grab specific items in order to like buff yourself or to grab certain things. And I feel like even though it's not exactly the same, this is very similar because I mean, it's literally the same idea. It's just you don't have multiples of the same like team, and it's just you as a Bang Boo moving around. The other one that comes to mind is like Final Fantasy. I believe it's Dissidia and Dissidia 012 or Duodecim as people call it, where you actually were on a grid once again, and they would have cutscenes. They did have cutscenes there, but nothing would really happen, and a majority of the story would actually take place via a grid system where you would move across the grid and you would move, throughout the story on this grid, like a little chess match. So as you can see, like I've got experience with games that are already doing this, and they had similar systems where you would literally do the same thing there, and now all of a sudden it's an issue here for other people, but for me it's just more of me seeing what I recall from back in the day. So a lot of this is pretty fun for me to actually re-experience. So for me, we already basically have like initially the biggest elephant in the room that people hate, I actually I actually don't have a problem with it. I really enjoy it, and I think that it needs to stay. Now, it can hopefully change so that way I guess other people can play, but me, I don't have a problem with it. Now, in terms of the button mashing that people keep talking about, people don't seem to understand that there actually is a lot more complexity, and there's not necessarily button mashing as I mean, you can button mash, but certain characters, like the one that I plan on going for, what's her name? Julian? Julian's a lot of like intense, like in your face gameplay where she's constantly blitzing all over the place. She's constantly firing off shots, spamming everything as much as possible, where she's quick and I mean you can't really button mash with I mean you can, but you're not going to get the desired results with her if you just sit there and button mash as opposed to actually building your gauge and doing everything as intended, which would by default pretty much dispel this notion that the game is not complex and that it does not have a complex combat system. And while it is perfectly valid to understand why people do not like a certain game, it is very important that they actually reserve judgment before they really get too far into things and give these really bad takes. Like I do know that MTash, again I love MTash, and Skull CJ, I discovered him recently, and I really like his Wuthering Waves videos. But they both stated that they did not like the game. To use Skull CJ as an example, he played the game for 6 hours, and he said that he did not enjoy it, and that is valid. However, if I were to take that same idea and let's say I apply that to another one of my favorite games, which is Devil May Cry 5, I mean, you can't even beat the game in 6 hours and you don't have all the moves unlocked. The difficulty has not increased because you have to beat the game in order for the difficulty to be increased. And you don't have all the moves unlocked, so you can't do all the crazy combos and stuff because you've got, if you have the special edition, you legit have like 4 different characters. And because you have 4 characters, and unlike in Devil May Cry 4, they do share a currency. As in, if you spend it for one, then only that one character gets it, as opposed to all of them having their own currency. I mean, you literally can't review it because this is literally the same as Zenless Zone Zero because you just haven't experienced what is there first, especially once you actually get outside of the combat and see that there's other systems. Like whenever you go to your shop and you know do your little daily. I know it's a small little nitpick detail, but being able to pick different characters because I have noticed that they do have different levels, like on the tapes and the genres, and they actually do have like a little happiness meter that are on the individual characters, and they promote things in different ways. So I don't know if that's going to be a factor later on, but I think that it's something interesting, and it would be nice for them to see later on. Until then, I will just be using different characters just for different ones in order to make sure that I don't screw up and piss someone off by accident. And while I do feel that it's comparable to Digimon Cyber Sleuth, it's very clear the Persona influence where you after you go to your HDD, you're going through these combat phases, and then afterwards, like you pick your party members, and then you set out to go out on your mission, fight your monsters, complete your objectives, pretty much get everything that you need done, and then afterwards you leave the area. You would then pretty much return to like daily activities. In fact, there's even a system with DMs called Knock Knock where you actually can talk directly to certain characters and say, hey, what are you doing? I want to hang out. I want to spend time with you. And they will say, sure. I will actually go ahead and talk to you. Where are we going? And can you pick a time? That time, I will show up then and there. And then, depending on the time, you either go back to what you were doing, where you were fighting, all these creatures, completing this mission, to pretty much, I guess, if it's then and there, then you would actually be going on again what is, I consider, a persona like dating sim, where you actually legit sit there and you have a whole dialogue with the character. Now, I do know that, for instance, Genshin, they do have that kind of system with the little 4-star like missions. I forget exactly what they're called, but they're like the little companion quests. Here, though, it's a bit more personal because, again, you go out of your way to message them. They come to you, they respond, they have like a whole conversation, and you build trust with them. Building trust with them not only would allow you to not only use them as a wallpaper, but it allows you to basically go into like deeper dialogue, since you get these cutscenes, and allows you to get, maybe like a deeper understanding of these characters. Because at the end of the day, whenever you have these, I guess, emotional attachments to these characters, you actually get to see what their like innermost thoughts and feelings are. And while certain games, I do know, do give you some insight on that, this is a classic example of them doing yet again another good job of letting you have a personal attachment with this character, because they're showing you, their more emotional side. They're showing you a side that they usually don't reveal to other people. To use Anby as an example, she watched a movie and she thought that it was pretty emotional, and she got emotional about it, despite the fact that she normally does not do that.
I only seem to get like this when I'm watching a movie.
And then sometimes, whenever you're performing your daily activities, you just run into them. And then you have an entire dialogue with them, similar to Persona. I know, Persona Shell. This is the Persona Shell talking. You literally build trust with them, even outside. So it's again a part of that little social link system, where you can just run into them while they're in the open world, and have again another dialogue with them where you can just have a conversation. And again, depending on what you pick, it actually will build trust, or from what I've heard, you can decrease trust. But I don't think anyone's dumb enough to try that, because I found out the hard way about doing stuff like that in Persona. I'm not doing it here. And even to get down to even the smallest of details, like another thing that I like is specifically the fact that you every day, as like a daily, can go around, and whenever you walk up to the newsstand, you talk to Howl, which is the little dog, and you have the newspaper that you can read through. And then every day you can claim the scratch pad, the little scratch pad, and after you scratch it off, you can win you can win not only Denny's, which is the currency, but you can win Poly from it. You can win Poly from it. Are you serious? Every day? And then on top of that, you can go to the coffee shop, and then not only do you get a buff towards drops, but you actually also can get 60 extra energy every day. So you literally sit there, and all they ask of you to do is every day scratch off a pad, and you may win 20 extra poly just for logging on, which, I mean, that's good. On top of that, you get free 60 battery every day, so it has now the highest energy outside, I guess, if you use the excess energy in Honkai Star Rail. And then on top of that, once you do get that buff, it actually has a menu that takes you directly to where you're wanting to go, where you can literally teleport and go straight there, and it tells you exactly what your buff is buffing, and you can immediately go to it and start farming immediately in order to not waste time walking around. And I know I'm just jumping around all over the place, but can we talk about the fact that they legit had a full Pokemon system? So if you don't know, they have at one point a commission, and they mention that you can come back. I'm not sure if there'll be like another part, but it's literally a Bamboo battle arena where you literally have like a little mini RPG like Pokemon, and you legit have 3 Bangbus, and you have basically like an auto chess match where you go by stats and by what's going on and passives in order to like battle back and forth like it's an RPG. And I just found that really, 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 really good. Like, I cannot get over how good that was to add. Not to mention the fact that the combat is not simple. Like, it can be simple. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not, but it has complexities, and I think EO says it best, how you can tell the difference between someone who plays and is doing as much as they can versus someone who isn't. Because I know, for instance, with my main team, whenever I get my dazes in and whenever I get my combos in, I know there are certain people that just sort of add whatever. I know I do my carries at a certain time, and I know that I make my support last because the W engine that I have for Soldier 11 requires her to have the assist or the dodge attack trigger in order for her to get her damage off. So it always actually has to be not Soldier 11 that goes last, but it has to be Lucy that goes last. So that way she can trigger the assist, and then once Soldier 11 pops off, the buff is going, and so is Soldier 11's buff with that W engine. And as we turn our page to the final part, which is the mid-game that I am currently at, I can honestly say that the notion, because I talked about it earlier and I sort of rambled on somewhere else instead of sticking to the point, the difficulty most certainly will ramp up. The basic mobs, don't get me wrong, they're just nothing, but the bosses, they get a lot more aggressive, and some of them outright have shields. And if you, I mean, that's not necessarily difficulty, as it's really just artificial difficulty, because it basically is saying you need X element, and if you don't have this element, then you can't really fight the enemy. But it's the fact that they are extremely aggressive. They are very, very, very aggressive, sometimes requiring you to go outside the norms in order to make sure that you're actually able to clear, because sometimes you just cannot break through those shields and you end up doing like no damage at all because of a barrier. Like, you literally will do nothing to them until they break. So there is complexity, and there is a need for characters, or like element checks, I guess you could say, but they are like punishingly difficult. Like, I know, I watched the video that Mr. Pokey put out for the first like CN player that cleared Shiyu Defense, and like, I think with like one mistake that the guy made, he took like one hit and he lost like 70% of his HP with one hit. So like, as in-game here, you are not, like, even in my own clips, like, mistakes, you get punished like pretty hard. Like, I'm myself am trying to get Anby some defense, because she takes a lot of damage whenever they're not dazed, and you pretty much have to parry, but it's not as if you can spam parry because the assist gauge, so your dazer is really more important than you would actually think. And then you just add on top of that the need to make sure that your DPS is the one using the ultimate. Now, not all the time in my case does Soldier 11 use the ultimate. There are some cases where I have to have Lucy use the ultimate, or I have to use Anby to use the ultimate, because there are just some times where it doesn't work, or there are some times where I have to use, for instance, Lucy's ultimate in order to get energy back because everyone is low. And I know that Soldier 11 can finish off an enemy because Lucy's ultimate does actually hit really, really, really fucking hard. I don't know why, but as a support, she hits hard as fuck. And while I definitely would not recommend using like a stunner's ultimate, them being the Dazer, sometimes, since they have the extra impact damage, I do allow it in certain instances because sometimes their ultimate is the one that is needed in order to like break through a shield, and then by the time I get to their days, like obviously they'll have their ultimate again. But we'll have to see with time as like we come out with more builds and more characters with more interesting synergies. I just got the what is it, trial number 5's what is it, the W engine there that helps with energy regen on supports. I'll probably be trying to test that out with Lucy, since Lucy really needs energy, because I really like having her buff up as much as possible, especially whenever, like, again, it's a team-wide buff, so why would I not want that? But overall, I really have to say that the game is good, and people need to give it a chance. If you don't like it, don't get me wrong, you don't have to like it, but at least imagine that the game is not for you, and don't just trash talk it. That's pretty much all I have to say. The goal is pretty much to have fun, and if you're not having fun, then I mean, I suggest that you just don't play. I am having fun, and please don't attack people who are having fun, with the game. Because overall, I mean, shoot, it just is what it is. People forget that the main objective for a game is to have fun. I'm enjoying it, and I definitely encourage people to give it a chance, and if you don't like it, that's okay. I know for a fact that I personally am really looking forward to Junyun whenever she comes out. Her design is pretty much exactly what I'm looking for in a character, but otherwise, you guys have a good one. I appreciate you hearing me ramble, and again, have a great day today.